I was incredibly depressed at that time, to the point where I didn't want to be on the planet anymore. And so my inner conversation was that I didn't want to be here, didn't want to be here. And I would be talking to God saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. And so the end of my second year of college, I said one last, please take me. I don't want to be here anymore. And it was about 4 days later that I had my experience. I was an avid mountain biker, nothing nothing extreme, but I just liked to go into the forest and bike around. And so there was a morning in May in 1997 where I took my bike out into the forest, to very familiar trails that I had biked on regularly. And on my way home or on my way out of the forest, I like to take these jumps. There were a lot of these fun jumps that I would take going down a hill. And it was the very last jump that I had taken, which I also was familiar with. I took that jump, but I noticed at the very last second, somebody had very recently built that jump up in such a way where it was unfamiliar to me. They had made it really big, Sergey. It was almost vertical, but it didn't actually click until I hit the jump. And so I wasn't used to how to hit that jump. And I knew that I was going to crash. It was very, very fast. The experience, I hit the jump. I flew way up into the air and came down on my front tire, then my head and my neck and my back. So it was like a rolling, and then my bike. And that's when I was really knocked out quite quickly. I had lost consciousness very fast. So the next thing that I remembered in this experience, which had actually taken quite a while after the experience to kind of put the pieces together, but what I had remembered, the next thing that I had experienced was that I was floating above the trees. And the redwood trees they're huge, they're very tall. And it wasn't like my body was floating above the trees. It was more so a very familiar space of who I was floating above these trees, almost like a consciousness, um, or or like a ball of light. But there was no real space to define the borders of my skin within this place. And very quickly, soon after that, um, as I was floating, I began to notice an incredible sensitivity that I had never experienced in my life up to that point before. And the sensitivity felt um, very visceral, but it was like an expanded senses. Like we have our five senses, but it was more than that. It was being able to notice sounds and feelings and sensations all at once. I could notice the wind, for example, almost moving through me, like the space of me moving through me. I could notice a dog barking far away, which I would think would be far away, but it felt like I was a part of that dog, or like the dog was barking right in my ear. I could see very clearly the little crystals on the redwood needles where the water would sit. And I could like zoom in and see these little crystals. I could hear the ocean, which was 10 miles away, maybe 5 miles away. I could hear the waves crashing. Um, I could notice feelings like even like fear or joy coming up very quickly. It was almost like I was just this vessel, but it wasn't so much the emotion that I was experiencing as it was the just the sensations. And there was a familiarity in this space of, oh, this is who I am, this is my soul, this is who I am. And there was a peace in this place, an extreme amount of just peace, this beautiful peace. And then I remembered looking down, or there was a point in time within this experience that I looked down and I saw my body on the ground, with the bike all bent out of shape, the unconscious part of me. And it was a recognition of, oh, I'm dead. There's my body, but I also felt like that's not me. That's the part of me that was being depressed, that was going to college, that was, trying to figure out his life in his early 20s. And at that moment, I got the question. It was almost like a direct cognition, a direct question that came. And I think it was spirit. It felt like it was spirit, but it wasn't like a voice other than me. I don't know if that makes sense. And it was, do you want to go further? Do you want to explore further, or do you want to go back? And my first reaction was, I don't want to die. And as soon as I said that, I was back in my body and experiencing a tremendous amount of pain. My whole body I was catching my breath to be able to come back into my body. It was like someone punched you in the stomach, right? And you lose your breath for a few seconds. It was that, but it was amplified. Um, I could feel the blood rushing through me and all of the pain of the injuries that happened. So I could feel my muscles, and I didn't know if I was disoriented, so I didn't know if I broke anything. I couldn't move at all. And as I was feeling this, I began to open my eyes. And as I began to slowly open my eyes, I saw fairies, or nature spirits. We know as like pixies, I guess. I don't know a lot about nature spirits as it's described in the world, but I just know my own experience of them. And they had these wings, and they were flying all around me. They were coming down and going up, and I was in this canopy of trees, so I was kind of, I was basically on my back looking at this, experiencing this, and they were coming all around me. And I don't know how long this lasted, Sergey. It felt like it was a moment in time that was um, taking me temporarily away from the pain that I was feeling in my body. And so as this was happening, I just was in this, again, like almost in this awe, but also detached from my pain, because this was such a nothing I'd really seen before with my eyes open. I had seen it before with my eyes closed, but I hadn't seen it with my eyes open. And so they were giggling. You could say that they were like men and women, if their men and women had bodies, but they didn't look like, you know they did look like little humans, but they didn't. I mean, they had wings and they had different colors and different skin colors. And then I began to hear this internal humming, like, I describe it as uh, like a singing bowl, like a Tibetan singing bowl, or like when your ears ring and you hear a high pitched ring in your ears. I know there's a lot of people who talk about that in the spiritual community. It was like that, but it was very intense and very low, like a low frequency, like a ooh. And I knew at that moment, I just knew that it was the trees that are also part of the cedar family, they were creating this humming effect. And I could feel it actually going into my body as this was happening. Um, I don't know how long any of this lasted, but there was a point in time when I came back to, oh, I'm in this body injured, and I could feel the pain again. And I didn't want to feel the pain, so it was almost like I shut off, and I had lost consciousness again. In other words, I shut off from all the experiences, and just completely went unconscious at that point. So time was very fluid in this space. I don't know how long it lasted. It could have been a couple hours, it could have been less. The next thing I remembered was waking up in a hospital bed in the small emergency room, um, at the community hospital there in that town, and a doctor looking over me and asking me questions that I couldn't answer. He would ask me, "Who are you? What's your name? Where are you from? Where are we right now? Do you go to college? He was asking me these questions, and I could not answer him. He had asked one more question, which I could answer, and that was, "Do you know any phone numbers I can call of anybody that you know in town?" And so I just blurted out a number. It just came out of my mouth, and that was a family friend in town. They were friends of my parents at the time, and they came and got me. Actually, I was discharged from the hospital. I was given a whole bunch of pain medications. The doctor said it was, he was telling me that it was amazing that I hadn't broken any bones. And so that was the end of the that story as far as the NDE. And then there's, so much more that has happened since and happened prior. And I don't know where you would like to go from here, Sergey.
Well, let's go a little bit more what happened after that. First of all, you told me what year was that? 1997?
Yes.
1997, in May 1997, and you were a student. So what changes? What happened in your life after that? Can we go a little bit more, a little bit further with the story? How this experience changed you? What occurred in your life? Something new? Did you tell anybody about this experience? Did these people believe you?
I didn't tell anybody about this experience until way later. I did tell a few friends. I told my mom, who has always been very open spiritually. The experience was so unreal to me that it felt that I was scared to tell people. So I did keep it dear to my heart. And I only told, I think, one friend and my mom. And that was because I felt safe. But even as I was telling it then, it was like, was this real? And it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I had actually come out and I wrote a blog post and started doing, talking about it. But it didn't actually, like, I had bits and pieces and then of my experience, but so then it was about, like, okay, so how did this, more information was coming to me, um, regarding, like, what actually happened. So right afterwards, I was, I wanted to feel better in my body. I had a lot of neurological pain, neuromuscular pain, um, and I I didn't really have any at that moment any big psychic openings or anything, you know, anything like that. It was more take care of my body. But what I also noticed was just a lot of trauma, I guess you could call it, or just a lot of emotions from the past were coming up. Um, as I was healing, wasn't doing any healing from traditional because it wasn't working for me. So I sought out alternative healing methods, and there was a healer. Um, so I ended up going from California back to Washington State, where my parents were, and I found somebody that could actually. He was a network chiropractor, and he began to work with my body. And within 9 months, that neuromuscular and um, pain in the body and all of the neurons that had been damaged were completely healed. And I was in awe. I was like, oh, this is incredible that somebody can actually help. I knew that I had to ultimately do the work myself, Sergey, but it was more so that somebody helped assist me with that, and that brought me along a path of wanting to understand how people can heal their bodies, and then also how people help other people heal, not just the body, but emotions, bring balance to um, the mind as well, and all of our thoughts. And so that took me on a path of studying massage therapy and doing body work, which has always been incredible. I don't do that anymore, but it was that part of my life was a huge part of my influence as well. Um, and then I also got into acting, which I loved, and being able to express myself and get on stage and do comedy. So It's taken a while, but I have become more and more sensitive over the years. I'd say even over the last 10, 20 years, where I've originally thought I was an empath because I was feeling everything, to the point where I could feel other beings besides humans, meaning animals and what they were going through, and I could understand nature more, and I could sense and feel, if even minute details of like ants walking on the bark of a tree. It was almost like, it's like, am I going crazy here? But I wasn't, because I've always been very grounded and very trying to be very practical with life in my life. But there's been a sensitivity that has increased steadily over the years, and that has included, like my heart opening more and connecting more with other people, and being able to see energy around life and stuff like that. So it has been a very gradual process. It wasn't like a boom, I had this near death experience, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden I was fully open.
Yeah. So it was a, let's put it this way, it was a gradual awakening. Now, were you spiritual at all before this incident?
Yeah, yeah, I was. I I really got into it in my teenage years when I was depressed. Again, I'll go back to my mom, who was very, very open, and she's always been very psychic and connected. And so I began to, like in high school, I would go running through the forest, or I would go skiing in the mountains, and I would feel a connection. It was almost like my escape. Nature had been my escape from this depression. And so I began to open up more even at that time. And I had met a woman. She became my first spiritual teacher when I was 18 years old. My mom introduced me to, and she did something at the time called a futuring initiation, and it was a ancient Egyptian initiation that um, basically activates the endocrine system and connects the. It's very complex. It's like opens up the third eye and the pineal gland to such a way where, and they called it futuring because she believed that people in the future were going to be fully open and spiritually connected. So that really, when I had that activation, it really had opened me up, but I wasn't open to how much openness there was, because there was still this depression coming down. And I realized even today it was, my ego kind of stopping me from experiencing more.
So you said that you were depressed before this incident. Did you get out of depression after this? How long it took you?
Um, After the incident, no, I actually got more depressed because my having that experience made me feel of see what's possible. Well, I guess there's two ways to look at it. First, it I wanted to go back to having experiences like that, and I was in a body. I had believed that this body was real, and that and there was just more depression. It was almost like I couldn't get away from it. And I realized today that it really has to do with my perception of the world and how I deal with emotions. Back then, I didn't know that. Back then, it was very real. My reality was being in this body, experiencing depression. There's a lot of people that do experience depression. I mean, I can say this now with a smile, right? But it's because I've gone through it. I'm not discounting what people are going through, because it can feel very real. And there had been times that, I did seek help. I had taken medication for a while for the depression. I had talked to people, um, therapists about it. And for me, that didn't work. That didn't help. And so spirituality and connecting with God became the way that I have been able to not fully move out of it, but to be able to see that there is magic in this world. Today, I rarely feel depressed, I can say. I mean, I'm human, so we have emotions that go up and down. So it might come on, but it's not like I'm attached to it. I can see it when it's there. And then I ask myself, what is this about? What am I perceiving?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that you were saying to yourself back then, okay, I don't want to live, I don't want to be alive anymore. You see, and the universe just fulfilled your wish. It's so interesting how it happens, law of attraction. Just, okay, you don't want to live, let me show you something. And that happened to you, so you can start valuing your life, so you can be grateful for what you have. Now, when you're floating about the trees, there's such a visual story here floating about it. I can almost see that and feel it, the music, as a filmmaker, I can imagine all that, and it feels so real to me. But I should give my 5 cents here. I remember I don't remember how old I was. I don't remember at all. It might be when I was a kid, it might be in my 20s. I don't remember, probably in my 20s. I had this dream for a while, for several nights or for several weeks, but it's always the same dream. I am naked completely, and I am flying over a big, huge field, and it's green and yellow. It's so beautiful. It's like a meadow, huge, beautiful. And I see in the distance a line of forest, so far, far away. And I'm floating towards that forest. And I'm looking down. I can't believe I'm floating, over the ground all by myself, not in a plane, not in a helicopter, just I'm not sure if I was naked or not, but I didn't feel I had any clothes on me. It's like it was so real. I remember it because it was the same dream every night for a while. How can you explain that?
Well, that's your experience. That's very interesting because I know that's your experience, and whatever your interpretation of that is what's most important. Um, when you're telling me the story, it makes me feel um, like freedom, as far as you were being shown that how free that life can be and how joyful life can be. But because it's not, I've had experiences similar to that, so I could compare it to yours, but that's completely your experience. I think it's beautiful, and it's whatever is possible is possible. Maybe we can fly, and we just haven't learned how to do that.
Yeah. Well, you probably know how to fly because you've been there. You've been floating about those trees, and you were feeling that wind moving through you. You said the wind moving through you. It's also very cinematic,
Yeah.
and it's amazingly described. And all those drops of crystals. Was it water or just some crystals
Yeah, it
on?
was water.
Yeah,
Yeah,
water. And
yeah,
you became one with all this nature, and you were feeling everything.
yeah. So yeah, that's right, right. So I did, I mean, I read a little bit about fairies beforehand. Um, and when I went into the redwood forest before my experience, I had a sense of them. Like, I believed that they existed. I believed that they were real. And then I also had an experience almost like a year before where my eyes were closed and I was dating somebody and I was very in love with this person and my eyes were closed and I could see them in my vision very clearly. So so it was like, oh, they do exist. They are real. So I did have this sense of magic, that was congruent to this very deep depression that was happening simultaneously. So I've always really believed in magic, and I had even as a child when I lived on an orchard. Um, I could talk to the nature spirits and I could see fairies when I was 3 or 4 years old. I do remember that. So it's
Okay, so
always
you,
been kind of, yeah, it's been with me, but Yeah, it's always been with me, but I really shut it off. It's almost like when children grow up, they kind of shut off. They're being told that they need to follow a system of life in order to succeed and be. And so I had shut it off, but it wasn't. So it was revitalized, I guess, through this experience of my near death experience.
Yeah, I'm wondering why you seen the fairies, because all my guests that I interviewed, they've seen different things. They've seen angels, they've seen being of light, they've seen tunnels of light. But you've seen the fairies, and maybe because you were prepared mentally for this imagery, this is why it showed to you. It was familiar to you, so you would feel safe because you knew the fairies are good. You don't have nothing to be afraid of, so they came to you. Did you feel any pain at that moment when you've seen the fairies? Were you were still in that unconsciousness? You're still on the other side.
Did I feel pain in my body or?
Yeah, yeah. When you were lying, okay, let me answer. Let answer me first to this remark that I made about the fairies, and then I'll go on my question.
Yeah, so I think that was, yeah, I felt safe because I think they were bringing me safety because that's what I knew is nature. I mean, I had a connection with God, but it was very personal. Um, but because I had been going through the forest every day practically to connect and to kind of escape this depression and to feel connected, I think I had that support there, and what that was the point where I needed the support the most when I was, on my body, or on the floor, on the ground, basically, just trying, just crash the bike. So that was the experience I had. That was for me. That was very personable. I didn't experience. I So there was a disconnect. I had the pain when I was on the ground, but as I was still in this experience and I was seeing the fairies, I wasn't feeling pain at that moment.
Yeah,
I was feeling I was feeling joy, I was feeling comfort, I was feeling safety. Um, Completely. It was just when I realized that I was in a body that was experiencing pain is when I had shut down again.
yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. I thought you were still feeling pain and seeing the fairies. It doesn't feel right. At least that's what I.
Yeah.
Okay, now you said that you felt a familiarity to this place. How did you feel that familiarity?
Oh, I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so the familiar feeling is almost unexplainable. It's a feeling of complete peace and connection. The familiarity felt like this is how it's supposed to be. This feeling of oneness, this feeling of being connected to all life. That's how it's supposed to be, and not feeling separate in bodies with pain and emotion and experience. Like, that didn't feel natural to me. So because I didn't want to be here on this planet, and then I asked to go back to that oneness, basically, is what I was asking for, and I got it. I got it for whatever small amount of time. And so that's always stuck with me since that near death experience. um, that feeling of familiarity, of this is just how it is, feeling one with all. And
Now you described this humming sound, or the sound of Om, like the Buddhist sound, Om. This was the sound, or you heard something else? It was like a hissing. What kind of sound was that?
are you talking about when I with the trees? When I explained it was coming from the trees, it was more like a Tibetan bowl, like a.
Okay, internal humming. Okay, I made a note
Yeah,
here. You heard this internal humming. It was like the Tibetan
mm,
bowl when they do that.
yeah, like the Tibetan singing bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
So
was
I
familiar.
felt it
Okay.
internally. I could feel it internally, but I could also notice that it was almost like the trees, um, that were doing this. And it was years later that I found out about a woman from Siberia. Her name was There were books written about her called Anastasia of
Anastasia.
Siberia.
Yeah, yeah. Has a lot of
Yeah,
books over there.
yeah, and she talked about the cedar trees, which are the same as the redwood trees, creating ringing tones. And I was like, "Oh, that's what was happening. They were creating these ringing tones." So that resonated to me when I read her books.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't write the books; it was somebody else.
No,
But
she
yeah,
somebody else wrote those books. She wrote the books through somebody else.
yes,
Vladimir, I
yeah,
forgot his last name. His first name was
Vladimir,
Vladimir
yeah, Megre,
Maigret.
Megre,
Yeah, that's right. Vladimir
Megre,
Maigret. That's right. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Amazing books. I read them probably in one sitting. I don't remember 7 or 8 books.
yeah, 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 yeah. They are amazing. They're incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah,
They're small
I believe
and
she's out there.
yeah, she is there. Yeah, and this guy just
She
say,
is.
"Well, yeah, yeah, amazing." Yeah, I remember. It was like 20 years ago. I read them or something like that. Once in a while, books like this come out to show people, to remind them who we are, and that there is something else except chasing money or chasing wealth or fame, or there is something else. And these little books, they were so beautifully written. It's amazing. And they were written in such a way, no religion over there, nothing. It was just nature.
Yeah,
How people can be connected to God through nature. This is all the message in this book. In
yeah,
these books, little
yeah,
books, yeah.
yeah. They're beautiful books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you remember the book, The Shack?
The Shack?
When God speaks to a person through a black woman, I think it's The Shack. It was a movie, I think, believe it was made.
Oh,
Another channeling experience. Great book. I only heard the audio version, but somebody sent it to me. And also, you read Neil Donald Walsh's book, Conversations with God.
yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
I,
are
yeah, I
tho-
remember that. Yeah,
those are
yeah,
channeled too.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful books.
Beautiful books.
Yeah.
I got them here, like the first several, because after that it's all repetition. But you know how it is. You have to repeat it all the time to remember it. So he repeats all
That's
the
so
time the
true.
same message. The first thing that struck me in that book was be grateful in advance. It was amazing. Be grateful. Not only be
Yeah.
grateful, but be grateful in advance.
Right, right.
Now, let me ask you a question, Tyler. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm not afraid to death. And I believe that took me a while after my near-death experience because I was still processing all of it. But I think that the ego fears death, and it longs for it. So the ego believes that this experience is real, that we are in these bodies and that we die. And the ego also believes that we die and then we go to a better place. So I think the ego is always telling us either to fear death and fear the experience of death, or to want it because it doesn't want the experience of life. And so because I know that, there really is no death. There's just a continuation of spirit. We drop into these bodies, we move on. We have new experiences in different bodies possibly, and then we move on. But there can be no death. I mean, God doesn't set it up that way. It's We are eternal beings, and I know that from my core. I can't. It's not me just saying it. I know that. I I don't know how else to explain it. So because of that, I don't fear death.
Now, if people want to find more about your work you do, maybe you have a book or something, would you like to share that?
Yes, absolutely. So I do have a YouTube channel, where I talk. I haven't done any interviews yet. I think I'd like to start doing that, but they can find me on that YouTube channel. And then also, if they need to contact me, my website is mysticsplayground.com, and that's where I'm working with my partner to create these workshops, so they can contact us through there as well. But I do have a book, and I wrote it about a year ago. It's a digital book, and if that can be found through my YouTube channel if people are interested in that as well. So
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Now, let me ask you this. You said that you didn't tell anybody for a long time. When did you decide to start telling your story and why?
So, like I said, I told my mom, and then what happened was, and I told a friend. So nobody else back then was telling near-death experience stories, and I didn't want to come across as who's this crazy guy. That was the fear at the time. And then about 3 years ago, I started to notice on YouTube more people were telling their story. And there's been a container that's been set up in the last few years where it's okay that people tell their story. So then I felt safe enough to say, okay, this is my story now, because there was enough people starting to open up and tell their stories. And so
Yeah.
that's how it happens with anything,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Now, do you go to church at all?
I don't go to church. I talk to God every day. I Jesus is one of my guides. I connect with him every day. I went to church a little bit when I was a kid. My mom used to go to Unity Church, so I would go with her. But I believe this experience, we can go to church, and that can be very nice to have a community and bring people together and to connect. I think that's a beautiful thing. But for me, um, my church is my connection, my daily connection with God, my daily connection with with Christ, my daily connection with myself, and also my connection with people like you. This is, making connections with you, and making connections with other people. That's what's sacred to me. So to answer your question, no, I don't go to a physical church.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought so. You don't need to go to church. You have the church around you. There is the ocean, half a mile.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
church by itself. And thanks for mentioning that you have the opportunity to connect with people like me. But it's not about me, it's about the people that you can connect through me, through this channel. Because me,
Hmm.
I'm just a channel, a video channel for stories and for people like you to tell your stories. And you probably told it probably 100 times already. You're going to tell it another 100 times more. But I think every time you tell it, you can remember something new, some different details. Because every podcast, every host may ask different questions. It might wake up something new in you. Yeah. What's your definition of freedom, Tyler?
My definition of freedom. I believe freedom is a choice, if that makes sense. We have in every moment to choose whether or not we're free from the perceptions that we tell ourselves. We have the choice in every moment to decide, am I going to believe what my mind is telling me, or am I going to um, decide to be in joy instead in this moment? And so the best way I can explain it is like the miracle of life is our willingness or our commitment to to enjoy the moment. Um, that takes a commitment to be able to, instead of like following the mind or the ego, it takes a commitment to enjoy this moment. And once we do it, it becomes easier, and that's
Yeah.
freedom for me.
Yeah, thank you. I think Abraham Hicks says the same message. They say it's all about joy. Just be joyous, and
Mm.
everything is going to be resolved in your life if you are happy, if you are joyous. I'm not sure, but I think this is the message, and his this is the message of Abraham Hicks. Now, what's your message? Do you have a message for your viewers?
I think that would be it, really. If I were to tell anybody, and I can't tell anybody because everybody has their own experience, right? Everybody has their own perceptions, their own life, their own emotions. It would be to, it takes bravery in this world to be able to decide if you're going to believe what you're telling yourself, or if you're going to be more willing to step into the moment, because this is where the joy happens. This is where life, this is where the miracle happens, is in this moment. Because of that, that's easier said than done. I mean, this has taken me a long time to figure out and to experience. Yeah, but we do have a choice, even if we're down and out and depressed, even though our situation seems very difficult. Maybe we're kicked out of our place to live, maybe we're homeless. We still, no matter what it looks like, we have a choice to continue to believe our perceptions, or look at our perceptions with compassion and say, I'm choosing to enjoy this moment.
Okay, today is Saturday morning in Hawaii, and now I'm curious, how is going to be your day today? I hope you're not going to go fixing cars today. I imagine that what you're going to do, this is what I imagine. You're going to just get out right now from your little house, barefoot, and you're going to walk to the ocean half a mile. You're going to sit by the ocean, grateful, and look at the waves, and maybe commune with God and with your inner self. That's my vision for you for today. But I don't know exactly what you're gonna do.
I don't know what I'm going to do either, but I probably will go to the ocean. I probably will go to the beach today and connect. I plan to do very little work if I have to do any work, and maybe call a few friends or talk to a few people. But I do would like to get to the water today, and yeah.
Well, Tyler, you gifted a little bit of happiness today in your interview to a lot of people. That's what I hope so. At least I think so. So thank you for that. It was a nice
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And have a beautiful day over there in Hawaii. Thanks again.
Oh, I couldn't have had this connection without you. Thank you very much, Sergey. It's a pleasure to talk with you.